Number 10. Tris Plover. Tris comes from a pretty dark future where all of humanity, it turns out, is living on a spaceship, destined to find a new home somewhere out in the cosmos to settle. The space vessel she lives on is known as Gotham, and she works as a farmer on the giant vessel. However, she ends up getting pursued by the authorities and decides to join the vigilante Batman. He tells her of the fact that there was a malfunction and their ship is actually now off course. Tris joins him as his Robin, and together the two of them manage to correct the ship's computer, putting them back on a proper course. Think WALL-E kind of, but if it were Batman and Robin teaming up to fix things instead of WALL-E and a reluctant Eve. Unfortunately, despite being a kind of cool apocalyptic future Robin, Tris still turned herself into the authorities in the end and was turned into fertilizer after she realized that it would take over 300 years for the ship to arrive at their now correctly programmed destination. Yeah, that's gotta be a pretty depressing revelation. Number 9. Earth 2 Robin. The original Earth 2 Robin was an alternate version of Dick Grayson who never became Nightwing but instead continued on with the mantle Robin well into his adulthood. He fought crime alongside the daughter of Batman and Catwoman, Helena Wayne, also known as the vigilante Huntress. Being that Earth 2 Robin was from the Golden Age, he's got a lot of weird knowledge and skills because, well, Golden Age comics, including medicinal and surgical skills. Thanks, Batman. He also was technically the original Robin despite now being considered an alternate due to a reorganization of the continuity following Crisis on Infinite Earths, and then again during Infinite Crisis, and then again following Flashpoint. Wow, that's a lot of resets. Though this version of Robin wouldn't be around to see all those resets, as despite his long list of skills, he died attempting to protect the newly formed Earth during the Crisis on Infinite Earths event. So he only lives on at this point in our hearts and in our old mags. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more bat lists, I want to give you those bat lists. So be sure to let us know that you like them by clicking that like button, and hey, why not share this list while you're at it? Help us find the people out in the world that also love Robins. Number 8. Robin 89. This alternate version of Robin made his first appearance in issue number 1 of Batman 89, a new limited series that takes place in the Burtonverse. One of my favorite verses. As a nod to the fact that Marlon Wayans was set to play Robin in the Burtonverse before Tim Burton left the Batman films, this version of him is black, which I think is pretty awesome. Initially, Marlon would have played Robin in the sequel, but the team actually decided instead to have him first appear in the third film. You know, the one that never happened, as Joel Schumacher then took over, introducing his own version of Robin in Batman Forever. We haven't seen much of this comic book version of what Marlon Wayans' Robin could have been, but what we did get is to see the mysterious figure who is Robin, likely still named Richard Grayson in this reality, take on Batman near the end of issue number 1 and hold his own against the Dark Knight. And so for that alone, and the fact that I'm really excited for Batman 89, I felt like I should include him. So hopefully you agree with me and you're also excited about Batman 89. Or if you're not excited, hey, let me know in the comments. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, you know what I mean? Number 7. Gotham City Garage Nightwing. Nightwing in this reality is known for fixing up bikes and wearing a leather jacket with no shirt underneath. Sounds pretty sweaty to me. He is recruited to help break into Lex Luthor's compound by Catwoman, and the pair of them are also joined by Kara. His skills here don't just include fighting and acrobatics, but also his driving skills, which are pretty impressive. Aside from that, Nightwing also has his tricked out bike, which adds to his power set. In this reality, he is rivals with Jason Todd, who himself gets his butt whooped by Kara. Nightwing in this reality is different in the sense that he is more selfish than his main continuity counterpart, and is willing to leave others behind in order to save himself. Number 6. Damian Wayne. What would an alternate Robin list be without a few of the main continuity Robins, of which we have a plethora of alternates already, as the role has changed hands throughout the years. I'm not going to list all of the Robins here, so if there's one that you're a huge fan of and I don't list them, please don't be offended, but I am going to mention a few that I just think are the most powerful and deserve to be mentioned, with some powerful Robin alternates from other realities and Elseworlds peppered in the mix there. Damian, of course, being one of those main Robins that I would like to talk to you about. Damian Wayne is another Robin who initially didn't have a problem with killing his opponents. This is due to the fact that he was raised among the League of Assassins, in part training with his mother, Talia al Ghul, herself a masterful and accomplished assassin and fighter. Damian has recently left the Robin mantle and his father's side to seemingly find himself in his own new Robin series. Although the series is called Robin, Damian claims to have turned his back on the bad and is looking to find out who he really is outside of his father's shadow, turning to his mother for some guidance guidance this time around, and also looking inside himself. Which I think, you know, Damian's still pretty young, so that makes a lot of sense to me. Number 5. DEATHLOK. DEATHLOK is the Amalgam Universe version of Jason Todd. He is a combination of DC's Jason Todd, who was once known as Robin, Marvel's Midnight, and Marvel's DEATHLOK. In the Amalgam Universe, however, his name still remains Jason Todd, just to be clear. Jason was caught in an explosion and recovered by the villainous organization Hydra, who healed him and repaired him by turning him into a cyborg, making him into their agent and DEATHLOK. But prior to this, Jason was already a skilled fighter, albeit somewhat reckless, taking up the mantle of Moonwing when he worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. after Dick had left the mantle and S.H.I.E.L.D. to go attend university. However, Jason would later be dismissed from S.H.I.E.L.D. after making a grievous mistake while on duty, a mistake that even as DEATHLOK he still blamed his superiors for, confronting both Dick Grayson and S.H.I.E.L.D. director Bruce Wayne during a fight later on. Number 4. Jason Todd. When it comes to Jason Todd, he is powerful because he doesn't often hold back and he doesn't really give up. While he may have trauma that sometimes can leave him vulnerable, his redefinition of the Bat Family moral code means that he's a touch more ruthless than your standard Robin. Okay, maybe a lot more ruthless. At least more ruthless after he left the mantle of Robin and became Red Hood. However, even during his time as Robin, Jason was a determined young man who, even when beaten, would never back down or give up in a fight. Currently, however, Jason is also a masterful sword fighter and weapons expert who is not afraid to kill those who get in his way, which is kind of what gives him an edge, I think, in comparison to some of the other Robins. Number 3. Robin King. Robin King is actually not an alternate version of any of our Robins from the main continuity. Gasp! Instead, Robin King is an alternate version of Bruce Wayne, who was inspired by a Robin's cheerful song at his parents' funeral in this reality. It was the young Bruce Wayne here who killed his parents due to the fact that he was inherently prone to violence and homicidal tendencies, even from a young age. Because this version of Robin is so murderous and dangerous, he could definitely be one of the most powerful Robins out there. Also, if you thought Jason had at times questionable morals or methods, the Robin King truly just blows him out of the water for that. Number 2. Dick Grayson. I think Dick has proven to be the most capable and powerful version of Robin that we've ever seen. This is likely thanks to a combination of Nightwing's personality and years of experience, considering that he was the very first Robin and has been around since the early days of Batman's vigilante career. He's also super flexible. I think he's also the most flexible Robin, which I know y'all might be thinking that doesn't equal power, but trust me, flexibility is hard and it is very powerful, I think. Do not underestimate someone who's very flexible. Dick even proved himself as a good fit as Bruce's heir when he himself took up the cape and cowl, filling in as Batman after he was presumed dead, but was really just MIA. Nightwing brings to the table not only his skills as a fighter and acrobat, but also his sharp wit as a perceptive and smart detective, as well as his forensic skills, or as I said once, his chemist skills. I called him a chemist once and people were like, that's not a thing. But he does have forensic skills, which is chemistry, so I feel like it still kind of goes hand in hand. I defend it. I would say when it comes to all-around Robin power, Nightwing is one of the most balanced, which generally gives him a leg up in comparison to the other Robins who tend to dominate in a specific area but usually lack somewhat in another. Basically, they're usually really good at like one or two things, but everything else they're fluctuating. And I feel like Nightwing is pretty much like here, like he's just really good at a lot of stuff. Number 1. Dragon Slayer. Dragon Slayer is probably the most powerful of the Robins that we've seen so far. He's also definitely the most metal. He comes from the Dark Multiverse, more specifically the Dark Multiverse Dark Knight's Metal series. He actually sort of has powers as well, coming with an electric guitar that also happens to be an axe. He plays it with a kryptonite pick, using its sound to create sonic blasts and even energy constructs. And okay, yeah, so he doesn't necessarily have powers, but he has a powerful weapon, so I'm gonna count it because it's like magically powerful. Dragon Slayer's Nightwing, aka Richard Grayson, is definitely the most badass of all the Robins here, and despite his very brief appearance, is in theory the most powerful. At least his brief appearance by comparison to some of the other ones. Although Plover was also brief.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Hush. Dr. Thomas Elliot was a childhood friend of Bruce Wayne's. Their upbringing, however, is just a touch different. See, Tommy tried to kill his parents so he could inherit their fortune, but unfortunately that didn't go as planned. But because Bruce's father, Thomas, was so great with his hands, surgically he was able to save them. So he of course became the masked villain, Hush. He spent his years working up ways to get revenge on Bruce Wayne, even getting help from, of course, Red Hood. Now of course he knows quite a bit about Bruce, So Red Hood's job was to mess with Bruce's head. That version of Red Hood ended up being seen as Clayface because he wasn't ready to reveal himself to Batman just yet. So while the Riddler's mind was enhanced in the Lazarus Pit dip, he figured out who Batman was. But of course Jason Todd gave him confirmation. And before we go on to number 9, if you haven't already done so, make sure to hit that like button because it helps us out here at the studio quite a bit. Now moving on to number 9, Joker Beatdown. See, usually when a main character dies in a comic book or a movie, the rest of the film just shows the other lead gearing up for revenge. In Jason Todd's case, death was not the avenging action to make. See, after the Joker had killed Jason Todd, Batman didn't kill the Joker. Now, of course, his one rule holds him from doing that, but in this case, is it warranted? Red Hood believes so. In fact, he ended up kidnapping the Joker and torturing him, even giving Batman an ultimatum. Kill Jason, or let Jason kill the Joker. The beating itself is just beautifully awful. Number 8, Arkham Knight. Fans rejoiced when the 2015 Arkham Knight game was announced. We loved the series since Arkham Asylum, back in 2009. Wow, 11 years ago. Get out of town, I feel sick. Are we all getting old? Are we just old now? Is that it? But when it comes to Arkham Knight, this was one of my favorite video games of all time. Not even just saying that. So of course I have to include it in this list. The villain in the game was of course the Arkham Knight, who was revealed to be Jason Todd. Now, instead of dying at the hands of Joker, he was being held hostage and driven insane, eventually becoming one of the hardest villains I've played in a superhero game. So he sports the new outfit and conflicts chaos for the 17-hour gameplay. That's around 45 hours for the 100%ers. I got to like 42 hours, I couldn't do it. It was too much. The Riddler trophies? Get out of town. Who has the time? If you haven't already played it through, there's a few alternate endings. So make sure if you do play, you really try and collect everything because those alternate endings are creme de la creme. Number 7, The Last Crusade. We go now to the 2016 Dark Knight Returns, The Last Crusade, written by Frank Miller and Brian Azzarello. So off the bat, readers see Candy Forsythe and Len Wright on Good Morning Gotham. They rejoice over the fact that the Joker has been taken into custody again, but this time they look at Robin as he's just a boy. They even use the words child endangerment when referring to him taking down the Joker. See, Jason Todd's methods are shown quite to be violent. After a chase with Joker's hitman, Batman disables their van. Stupid, ignorant amateurs, Batman says as he tries to drag them free of the flaming van. He could smell gasoline, so he encouraged Robin to hurry with taking them out of the non-reinforced van. Maybe his version of taking them out is a bit different. See, one of the punks pops his head out, but shortly after his head is stomped on by Jason. And the issue even highlighted how the punk's blood steamed and bubbled on the hood. Looks like a pretty red hood, if you ask me. The issue goes on to show how Batman feels responsible for the methods in which Robin takes down these bad guys. Batman even saying, "This is what I trained him to be, a ruthless killer." And this is when Jason decides to handle some Joker business on his own. Number 6, Felipe Garzona's death. In Batman issue 424, The Diplomat's Son, we see Robin take matters into his own hands. Ranked number 28 in Wizard magazine's list of 100 best single-issue comics since you were born, The Diplomat's Son has one of the darkest title page illustrations I've seen. So we see a not-so-smiley Robin pushing somebody off of a building. And judging by the size of the cars down below, it's not the kind of push we saw from the Dark Knight. Now, the victim was a not-so-great guy by any standards at all. The victim being Felipe Garzona. See, after avoiding a sexual and battery charge, a lot of readers actually enjoyed Felipe's fate, considering how bad this guy is. After Felipe fell to his death from his penthouse suite, Batman swoops in and asks the pressing questions. Did he fall, or was he pushed? And Robin simply replied with, I guess I spooked him. He slipped. And Batman is left standing there thinking about what had just taken place and why. And number 5, Earth 51's Joker. Now, halfway through this list, we're thinking maybe he's a bit of a troubled soul. Well, in the Final Crisis event, we see one of the craziest things ever. On Earth 51, that is. Jason Todd was sent to find Ray Palmer across the multiverse, and during his travels, he met the Batman from that Earth 51, who at this point was a bit different than our classic Caped Crusader. See, Earth 51's Batman was this badass murderer after Jason Todd's death. So after he was given a fancy new red suit, that Batman was murdered by the Joker and other multiverse characters. So our Jason Todd decided to kill Joker by using a rock to his head. Holy sh**. I mean, in all fairness, he was laughing at that Batman's dead body, so kind of warranted? I don't know. It's a rock. Number 4, Jason and Grayson. Following Infinite Crisis, DC released a comic in 2006 titled 1 Year Later, which, as you would guess, shows where our heroes and villains are exactly a year afterwards. So Dick Grayson moves to New York and then he sees that Nightwing is there. Huh? And he's taking care of criminals. Like taking care of them, you know? With a little side of death in there, just sprinkled in, you know, just some punches and some death. The suited up Dick Grayson is then approached by the fake Nightwing, who turns out to be none other than our Red Hood, Jason Todd. So of course they scrap it out and Dick Grayson is knocked off a building, with Jason Todd of course preaching how much more the city of New York liked his take on the Nightwing mantle. The pair end up fighting again for the second time and Jason Todd wins again. The two ends up teaming together, but seeing Red Hood steal Nightwing's mantle and kick some serious ass, that's one for the books. Number 3, he stole some tires. Jason Todd was given a darker origin after the Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline. This time we see him introduced to Batman as a criminal, which does make a lot of sense considering the horror stories I just told you about. So Batman catches him while he was stealing tires. Doesn't sound too bad. I mean, now's the time for winter tires to be put on anyways. No, these tires belong to the Batmobile. Yikes. So Batman wasn't too upset. In fact, he was kind of impressed. See, the Batmobile isn't an easy target. I mean, there are security systems in place to avoid a situation like being left with no tires at the beginning of a mission, which would be hilarious. This got the attention of Batman, unfortunately. Who knows, if Batman didn't catch him, maybe he would have turned out differently. Maybe he would have had a different upbringing. Just like as a petty thief rather than, you know, Red Hood. That would be a great alternate issue though. Batman's like, I'm on my way, and then he just sees this car with no tires. He's like, okay, I'll be there in like 42 minutes. Damn it! Number 2, Robin vs. Robin. Imagine getting dumped and your significant other dates somebody that's just like you but better in all the right ways. Isn't that brutal? And to make matters worse, imagine if you saw them and they were wearing your clothes. Like, what if this dude had on your hoodie? That's crazy. The disrespect. So after Jason Todd's return, he of course was not a fan of the new Robin, Tim Drake. And to show who the real Robin is, Jason decides to beat the hell out of Tim Drake. He even took down the other Titans in the process. Even though Tim may be the better detective and better trained than Jason, anger really is something else. And finally at number 1, the Poison Prison Blues. So while Tim Drake held the mantle of the Caped Crusader, Jason Todd was being held in Arkham Asylum. In Batman's words, it was for his own protection. So after explaining to Batman that he had passed all the tests numerous times, the psychological tests, he was transferred to a regular prison in Gotham. Now at this point, there's tons of criminals that want a piece of Jason Todd. Jason decides he's had enough of the incoming threats and poisons the cafeteria, killing 82 and sickening about 100 more. That's one way to take out all of your haters. Geez, it kind of reminds me of that scene from Watchmen with Rorschach.
Number 10, Helena Wayne, Earth 2. Before there was Helena Wayne of Earth 2, there was Helena Wayne of Earth 2. Are you confused yet? Are you watching this with subtitles? This version of Helena Wayne was the first child of Catwoman and Batman from Earth 2. The original Earth 2, cause yeah, there's 2 Earth 2s. Look, I don't know what to tell you, it's DC, it's confusing. The original Earth 2 that this Helena Wayne is from was one of the worlds destroyed during Crisis on Infinite Earths. We later would see Earth 2 brought back, but of course slightly different, and technically in a different continuity. But on this Earth 2 that we're talking about, Helena's mother died in a tragic accident when she was blackmailed into returning to a life of crime. This is in part what actually inspired Helena Wayne to fight crime herself, taking up the name Huntress and avenging her mother's death. She tracked down the man responsible and learned that the photo that he had used to blackmail her mother was actually a fake. It showed her mother killing a cop, but in truth, Catwoman had never done such a thing during her time as Catwoman. Huntress in this version of Earth 2 is known for being a skilled fighter, martial artist, and archer. She typically fights with batarangs or a crossbow. Number 9, Helena Wayne, Earth 2. This alternate version of Helena hails from the same reality as Power Girl, who is also her best friend. Helena on Earth 2 is the daughter of Catwoman and Batman. And to be clear, this is the Earth 2 that came after the previous Earth 2 that we just talked about. I hope everyone's following this. I hope you're following this. I wish I had drawn like a diagram for everyone. There's this Earth 2 and there's this Earth 2. Helena here initially fought alongside her father as his Robin. However, she ended up leaving her world in what she thought was the pursuit of Darkseid after her father was killed during a Parademon's attack. Helena had tried to save her dad but was unable to as the tower that he was in exploded, killing him. This version of Helena would spend a lot more time on Prime Earth with Power Girl, who took the name Karen Starr. The two would split up for a while but inevitably rejoin forces and find a way back to their Earth, their home. Back on Earth 2, Helena would take up her father's mantle, eventually becoming the new Batman. And if you're wondering, wait, no, do you mean Batwoman? Did you say that wrong? No, I mean Batman. That is the name that she takes. Batman, just like her dad. Being trained by Batman, Helena has a bunch of skills as his and Catwoman's daughter. She's especially well known for her skills with the crossbow, as an investigator, her stealth, and her fighting prowess. Before becoming Batman while living on Prime Earth, Helena went by the hero name Huntress. All the Helena Waynes, all the Huntresses, all the Bat babies. Bat baby. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn more about Batman's kids, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. He's got a lot of cool kids, and I'd like to talk more about them. Number 8. Terry McGinnis. Terry is basically Batman in the future. He not only has Batman's genes, but was trained by the old man himself, and he also has future tech to aid him in his missions as well. You might not think of Terry McGinnis as Batman's son, considering, well, he has 2 other parents who raised him and brought him into the world. But Terry is also genetically related to Batman. Amanda Waller helped to create Terry into the man that he is today. She manipulated his father's DNA to make sure that when Terry was conceived, his genes would actually match Batman's, aka Bruce Wayne's. This all happened as part of Project Batman Beyond, which was all about building a new Batman to replace the former. Waller also almost had his parents assassinated to help give Terry motivation to become a hero, but Andrea Beaumont's Phantasm, who she hired to do that job, ended up refusing to go through with it. But don't worry, he still becomes Batman anyways. Otherwise, he wouldn't have any skills for me to talk about, I guess. Could you imagine if I just had like most powerful children of Batman and they were all like accountants or something? And I was like, this is a better accountant than the other one. Number 7. Tim Drake. Tim Drake is known for being probably one of the smartest children of Batman around. Although Tim had parents in the original continuity of New Earth, he was adopted by Bruce Wayne. So at least then and there he was considered an adoptive son. In the current continuity, his backstory hasn't become quite as tragic as the former, and I believe his parents are still alive in that reality. Although I think he's still considered Batman's adopted son there too. So he has parents, but he's also adopted? I don't know. While Tim might not be the best marksman or fighter of the bunch of Bat kids, he is definitely the most intelligent and best detective when it comes to living up to Batman's legacy. Does this make him the most powerful? I don't know, it can depend on the mission that he's got, I guess. I would argue that smarts is actually one of the most powerful things or skills you can possess when it comes to heroics, but many others often measure power in how hard you can hit. So even though I kinda wanna put Tim Drake higher on this list, I feel like there's gonna be a lot of people that are gonna be like, but he's not the biggest muscles. Which is fine if that's how you measure power, but how do you measure power? I mean, there's lots of ways to measure it. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments. Number 6. Helena Wayne. Last rites Batman/Catwoman. I promise this is the last Helena on this list, although honestly I really do love a lot of what they do with all the Helena Waynes. I love Helena Wayne as a character, and I wish that she was part of the main continuity. Let Batman and Catwoman be together and let them give us a Helena Wayne. This is probably my favorite version of Helena thus far. She is the one that appears as the daughter of Catwoman and Batman in Last Rites and Tom King's Batman/Catwoman series. This version of Helena is really just, I think, a little bit of an improvement of the redo that we saw with her character from New 52's Earth 2. She also has the investigative skills of her mother and father and is a skilled fighter and acrobat. Helena Wayne here goes on to become Batwoman in honor of both of her parents. Also, if you're wondering how Kate Kane feels about that, because you know, that's kind of her mantle, I'm not sure what she's up to in this reality, or if she exists. If you know more about Kate Kane here, please share with me in the comments. I'd love to learn more. I tried to do some research on that and I was like, I can't find anything, so I'm assuming Kate Kane is like, I feel nothing because I'm not here. Bye. Number 5. Damian Wayne. Probably one of the most powerful semi-natural born kids around, and definitely one of the most dangerous, is Damian Wayne. Damian is the son of Batman and sometimes villain, sometimes ally, Talia al Ghul. Depending on which story you were going with, his conception was pretty controversial, as it has been implied and interpreted mainly that Talia forced herself on Bruce in order to get pregnant with Damian. Damian also was only a semi-naturally born kid because he did not gestate in a womb, but instead was kind of like grown in a tube. He was raised initially by his mother, who then dropped him on Bruce's doorstep when he was around, I think, 8 or 10. Initially, he and his father didn't get along too great, partly because of Damian's spoiled attitude, and partly because, despite still being a kid, he was already a murderous, deadly assassin that had been raised mainly by the League of Assassins. So, you know, that's gonna be a problem. Especially as, you know, Batman has a moral code, and Damian initially didn't really have much of a moral code. He was like, what's wrong? I can just decapitate people, that's fine. Why is it a big deal? They're bad guys. Number 4. Jason Todd. Everyone's favorite son of the Bat has got to be Jason Todd, or at least a lot of people's favorite son of the Bat. If that's not you, that's okay, but I know there's a lot of Jason Todd fans out there, so like, show yourselves. I see you. Well, Jason Todd has come a long way since he was first introduced in the comics, back when we knew him by the nickname Jason J. Todd. When he originally appeared in issue 357 of Batman, his backstory was actually very similar to former Robin Dick Grayson. Of course, his backstory would be redone and it wouldn't be this anymore, but initially, in the New Earth continuity, Jason Todd was introduced as an orphan whose parents were both originally acrobats who had died. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Like Dick Grayson before him, Jason was taken in by Bruce Wayne and trained to become his new Robin. Bruce even seemingly adopts Jason in this version of the story, making him one of the Batman's adopted kids. And I think even in Prime Earth continuity we consider him an adopted kid, although I don't know if he's formally been adopted. Jason Todd now, however, has more of a challenging relationship with Bruce Wayne in the current Prime Earth continuity, due to the fact that he has no problem killing villains when needed, and often uses lethal force and firearms against them when he fights. Jason Todd is known for being one of the most gifted and brutal fighters in the DC universe. But Jason's not just a bruiser, he's also got a sharp mind as well, and perhaps even a bit of a magical power set since being revived in the Lazarus pits. There was also, I think, for a time we considered him to be immortal because of that, but I don't think that's a thing anymore. For those that want to be like, he's immortal! I don't know if that's true anymore, but it was a thing at one point that was implied. Number 3. Nightwing. While Dick Grayson is not born of Batman, he spent a good amount of time being raised by him and is actually an officially adopted child of Bruce Wayne's. After years of Dick being like an adopted son to Bruce decided to actually fill out the paperwork and finally make it official. So yeah, there's actually paperwork for this one, friends. Nightwing is one of the most powerful Robins, Bat family members, and sons of Batman around. He is a great all-around kind of powerful. Instead of dominating in one specific field when it comes to Batman's skill set, Nightwing does a great job of excelling sort of in all aspects equally. While some might think that this makes him weaker overall because he's not like a super big powerhouse in one area, I'd argue it makes him stronger overall as a character, as it means he has less weak spots in comparison to some of the other heroes, anti-heroes, and even villains in the multiverse who have trained under Batman. Nightwing is a great detective, fighter, acrobat, and he has a great heart, which is part of the reason he's such an amazing hero. Number 2. Cull. Cull is the daughter of Wonder Woman and Batman from the Dark Multiverse. We don't as of yet know what Dark Earth Cull hailed from, only that she was raised and trained by both her parents before she turned to the dark side, joining the Batman Who Laughs, who in turn served Perpetua. During the Dark Knight's death metal event, Cull ended up in a fight against Wonder Woman, who was amazed by her strength and her skills as a fighter. To read more about Cull and her badass self, you can check out Dark Knight's death metal Trinity Crisis, and I know that the Dark Multiverse is kinda gone, but I do hope we get to learn more about Cull and her backstory. I hope that's like not the only time we get to see her. She just seems like such an interesting character to me, and also I miss the Dark Multiverse. I just want more Dark Multiverse. Please, please. She ranks high on this list because due to her heritage, she possesses an Amazonian physiology like her mother. This means she is not likely someone that you would want to come up against in a fight. And she likely also possesses her father's enhanced intellect and sense of resourcefulness, making her an even more dangerous enemy to face. Also, it's really rare, I think, that Batman and Wonder Woman get together in realities and actually have kids. I feel like that's not usually a thing that happens, so she's a rare one. Number 1. Jarro. Jarro is probably the strongest child of Batman to have ever existed, at least obviously in my mind. When it comes to his potential for power, he could technically conquer the entire Earth if he wanted to. Fortunately, he doesn't want to. Jarro mainly wants to be a good son and become the best Robin ever in his father's eyes. He was grown by Batman from a tissue sample he'd had of Starro the Conqueror. Batman grew and raised Jarro himself, teaching him how to be a good alien starfish and a good hero. Jarro has teamed up with his dad before to help the Justice League, and there's almost nothing that he wouldn't do for Bruce. Due to his unique alien physiology, Jarro has a slew of powers available to him, the main one being telepathy and mind control. He's also heckin' smart, possessing genius level intellect. Plus, he's the cutest. Like, I'm just saying, if we're doing a top 10 cutest children of Batman list, or even the Justice League, cutest children of the Justice League, I think that Jarro would also end up at the top. Like, he's pretty cute. Just putting it out there.